In 1873, a tailor in Nevada had a problem. His customers, gold miners, railroad workers, cowboys, kept ripping their trouser pockets. The fabric gave way at the points of strain. The seams failed. The pockets tore. His solution was a copper rivet, a small metal fastening at each stress point, reinforcing the fabric where it was most likely to fail. He knew the idea was too big for him to manufacture alone, so he wrote a letter to the most successful dry goods merchant in San Francisco, a German Jewish immigrant named Levi Strauss, and proposed a partnership. On May 20th, 1873, they received a patent. The first pair of riveted denim work trousers had been born. 150 years later, a pair of those same trousers, unchanged in their essential design, would be the most important item in the skinhead wardrobe. Not the boots, not the braces, the jean, worn short, worn tight, turn-ups rolled high enough to show the Dr. Martens underneath. Every skinhead in Britain knew exactly what a pair of 501s meant, and none of them knew they were wearing a Nevada gold miner's work trouser. This is skinhead style, and this is the story of the gene that defined skinhead style. The tailor's name was Jacob Youphes, born Jacob Youphes in Riga, Latvia, then part of the Russian Empire. He had emigrated to America as a young man, Americanized his name, and eventually settled in Reno, Nevada, where he ran a small tailoring shop. The problem of ripping trouser pockets had been brought to him by a customer's wife who wanted a pair of sturdy trousers for her husband, a large man who needed something that would survive hard labor. Youphes applied his rivet solution. The trousers held, and word spread quickly among the mining community. By the time he wrote to Levi Strauss, he had already made around 200 pairs. Levi Strauss was born in Buttenheim, Bavaria in 1829 and had emigrated to the United States at 17. He ran a highly successful dry goods business in San Francisco, importing and selling fabric, clothing, and other goods to the booming frontier economy of California. He and Youphes went into business together, and within years, the riveted denim trouser, called the XX, made from 9-ounce denim sourced from mills in New Hampshire, was selling to exactly the people it had been designed for: working men who needed clothing that could survive their working lives. In 1890, the XX was renamed the 501. A reference to the manufacturing batch number assigned to that particular style of denim. The name was not chosen for marketing reasons. It was a production code. The most famous number in the history of fashion started life as a warehouse reference. The 501 spent its first 60 years as working clothes. Nothing more. Gold miners wore them, cowboys wore them, railroad workers wore them. They were sold in hardware stores and general merchants alongside tools and rope. What changed everything was Hollywood, and specifically, it was the image of the outsider, the rebel, the young man who refused to conform. Marlon Brando wore 501s in The Wild One in 1953. James Dean wore them in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. Two of the most powerful images of American youth culture in the post-war era, both wearing the same working man's trouser from San Francisco. The message was clear. This was not fashion. This was a statement about who you were and what you refused to be. Elvis Presley wore them. John Wayne had worn cuffed 501 originals in Stagecoach in 1939. The jean that had been made for Nevada gold miners was becoming the most recognizable garment in American culture. And then it crossed the Atlantic and found the audience that would make it truly iconic. British mods of the early 1960s discovered American denim through the same channels they discovered everything American: through music, through film, through the cultural pipeline of Jamaican and American influence that was flowing into British working-class youth culture. The 501's narrow cut and straight leg fitted perfectly with the mod preference for precise fitted clothing. It looked sharp, it looked American, it looked like the future, but it was the skinheads who made the 501 entirely their own, and in doing so, gave the jean a meaning it has never lost. The skinhead relationship with the Levi's 501 was specific and deliberate, as the Victoria and Albert Museum documents in their collection of skinhead clothing from the late 1980s. Levi's brand jeans were popular because of their narrow cut and skin-tight fit, which meant that the red braces associated with the look could be worn hanging down decoratively. The fit was everything. The 501's straight leg and relatively high waist created a silhouette that worked perfectly with braces, pulling the jean up, creating a precise line from waist to boot, and the boot was the point. Skinheads wore their 501s short, cropped above the ankle, sometimes with turn-ups rolled high, sometimes without, to show the Dr. Martens underneath. The jean was not the statement. The jean was the frame for the statement. The turn-up was not decorative. It was functional in the same way the Harrington worn inside out was functional. It made the boot visible. Wearing your 501s short and tight said, "I know what I'm wearing on my feet, and I want you to see it." The specific details that made the 501 the right jean for the skinhead wardrobe were built into its design from 1873. The copper rivets at the stress points, unchanged since Jacob Youphes' original solution in Nevada, gave the jeans a durability that fashion denim could not match. These were not fashion trousers. They were work trousers. They could be worn every day, washed rough, dried hard, and they would last. Working-class youth who needed clothing that could survive their lives chose the 501 for the same reason gold miners had a century earlier. The button fly, the 501's defining functional detail, replaced by the zip on most subsequent denim designs, was a matter of principle for the skinheads who cared about authenticity. A zip was a shortcut. The button fly was the original. The selvage denim that Levi's had sourced from the Cone Mills White Oak factory in North Carolina since 1927, the signature 10-ounce red selvage that gave vintage 501s their distinctive texture and fade, was replaced with wider loom denim in 1984. For the skinheads and collectors who sought out vintage pairs, the red selvage edge visible inside the turned-back cuff was the mark of the real thing. These details mattered to people who understood them, and skinheads understood them. In 1984, Levi's ran an advertising campaign in Britain that changed the brand's trajectory entirely. The campaign, shot in black and white, featuring a young man stripping down to his underwear in a laundrette, made 501s fashionable in mainstream Britain in a way they had never been before. Sales exploded. The jean that had been the choice of working-class subcultures and American rebels became, almost overnight, the most desirable fashion item in the country. The skinheads had been wearing 501s for 15 years before Levi's thought to advertise them in Britain. The two-tone revival of the late 1970s and early 1980s had already confirmed the 501's permanent place in the skinhead wardrobe. The sharp-dressed youth of the two-tone scene, connecting consciously back to the spirit of '69, wore 501s with the same precision their predecessors had. Short, tight turn-ups showing the boots. Kurt Cobain wore them with Converse in the early 1990s, and the jean crossed into a completely different cultural territory. The same garment, unchanged in its essential design since 1873, was simultaneously the uniform of the spirit of '69 skinhead, the two-tone revival, and American grunge. That is the 501's particular genius. It absorbs the culture that wears it without losing its own identity. Jacob Youphes, the Latvian Jewish tailor who had the idea for the copper rivet, died in 1908. Levi Strauss died in 1902. Neither of them lived to see their trouser become the most famous pair of jeans in history. The 501 is still in production. The button fly remains. The 5-pocket design remains. The rivet at the stress points remains. The number, That manufacturing batch reference from 1890 remains. Worn short, worn tight, turn-ups showing the boots. The skinhead's contribution to the 501's long history was not inventing anything new. It was understanding, instinctively, that a working man's trouser from Nevada deserved to be worn by working-class youth in Britain the way it had always been worn, with pride, with precision, and without apology. This is skinhead style.